the Niners put out the press release when they announced in May that you were going to be in the 49ers Hall of Fame, 33rd member. Was that something that was even on your mind? Were you thinking about it? Had it occurred to you? Were you waiting for it?
You know, I thought about it in the past, but it really wasn't on my mind at the time. I hadn't switched over to football mode, and I had a call on my phone. And years ago, I had talked to Jed York, and so I hadn't talked to Jed lately, and I saw it was from Jed, and I thought, oh, they probably have some event or something that he's calling about. And when I answered the phone, he said, "Can I speak to the next member of the 49ers Hall of Fame?" It was so cool. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
It was super impressive. And Jed was fantastic and gracious. And it was really exciting.
Have you felt, there's always, I love talking to athletes who've competed at the highest level. There always seems to be, not always, but often, this mix of like humility, but also probably this internal monologue while you were a player that was, you're probably saying the most badass stuff in the world to yourself about like who you are, right? And like who can't take you down and all of that. How did you, every interview, every story about Brent Jones is like, this guy's just the humility, right? All of that, but also to compete at this level requires a certain level of that bulletproof confidence that would be, if you probably shared your thoughts with people outside of your locker room, people would think this is the most arrogant guy in the world. So what was that? What is that mix like in your head?
God, you're the first person that has ever asked me that question. And I hadn't thought about it a lot, but it was really true. And I think you have to have maybe two personas, kind of a game locked in persona where you're the badass and nobody can take you and you don't care. And hey, I'm going to go across the middle. And if some guy tries to knock me out, I'm getting up. You can't hurt me. And it's weird. It's a little bit of a mindset. It's a little bit of kind of dropping into the zone on game day and having no fear. It's really weird. And then outside of game day, there's times where you have to toughen up and be mentally tough at practice, training camp. Back in the old days when we go to training camp for 4 or 5 weeks and be in pads and kill each other in 110-degree weather, you had to be mentally tough. But I think it kind of comes around to that point about getting yourself ready to go, being mentally engaged, and then it's weird kind of when you come out of it. So typically on Sundays, I wouldn't be able to sleep very good. I'd just be wired. And no matter how tired you were, no matter how beat up, great game, frustrating game, I could hardly sleep. And so Monday mornings where I'd be kind of wiped out. And we'd go in for film and practice and treatment and what have you. And you'd kind of slowly come down off of that, that badass, I'm tougher than anybody, I'm not afraid of anybody attitude. And I think that got me through it, but I don't think it was by natural disposition, I guess is probably the best way to say it.
Interesting. But it had to be naturally in there somewhere for you to rise the way you did, compete, overcome, all of that stuff.
It was there. And I think, gosh, it wasn't always there because you didn't have the confidence because I was a late football player. I was second string in high school. Frustratingly, I thought I could be starting and then still got a chance to play at Santa Clara. They moved me from wide receiver to tight end and started gaining weight, focusing on my speed and doing that. And then all of a sudden, I remember really my first experience at a higher level was I got to play in the East-West Shrine game. So go out to those practices and, there are coaches, scouts and all that. And you kind of start to develop this confidence like, hey, I can play with these guys. Hey, I can do this. I went to the combine when nobody knew what the heck the combine was. You didn't even know what their drills were. And I remember guys kind of teasing me, making fun of me, going, Santa Clara, is that like a high school? And, everybody from Alabama and Oklahoma and Texas and USC. And so I remember kind of having a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, just coming from a smaller school and a program where people think, oh, this guy's got no chance. And so that kind of started making me mentally tough, I believe. And then I kind of had unsung chip on your shoulder attitude, I think, throughout my whole career. I kind of stuck with that. And that's kind of, I guess, how I developed that side of my mental preparation. And so it just kind of hung with me thinking back all these years. But it's a good question because I hadn't thought about it a lot. But, at the time I'd laugh. And then, every once in a while, your game day attitude would show up during the week. I can't bark at my wife or, somebody cuts you off on the freeway and you're ready to take them on. It's like, okay, calm down, big boy.
I remember, and I know, there's a lot has happened since this, but a couple years ago, Brandon Ayuk blocked I think it was Roquan Smith, one of the Ravens linebackers, like pancaked him, and everybody saw it. And I showed it I interviewed Ayuk in the locker room like the next week, and it was like Wednesday or something. And he said his process was he's like, I got to watch film today and find out who I hate this week. And I thought that was such an interesting, window into like probably the way a lot of guys think, right? Like, who do I hate this week?
Yeah.
Especially if you're a blocker.
They're basically the enemy for that week. And it's weird, it's fun to watch games nowadays, and it's not quite the same, but there's so much camaraderie after the game and high-fiving and switching jerseys and signing autographs. It's like, we did not do that. You had a brief interlude to shake a guy's hand and get going, but I don't know that would have been the case in our day, because there were coaches, there were teams where you really were not supposed to like each other and not have anything to really do with each other at all, other than showing a little bit of sportsmanship after the game.
Isn't it interesting too? Like, I don't know if you guys ever, I didn't look this up. I didn't think of it till you said it, but here you are from Santa Clara, no longer has a football program. Pete Carroll from University of Pacific. And he was the defensive coordinator, like at the end of your Niners tenure for a couple of years, right?
He was so great.
What was he like? I mean, he's still going. It's pretty incredible.
You know what? I love the guy. He was ahead of his time. Kind of embraced the game and kind of the fun, jovial nature. Like, we get to play a game for a living. We get to coach a game for a living. And he'd always be out throwing the ball around. And this was 30 years ago. And he's not any spring chicken nowadays. And his time at USC, I went and visited him a few times, and he was 100% that guy. Yeah. And the guys, he's playing, he's having fun, he's joking around. Yeah, when it's time to get focused on football, he's great. But he also understands there's downtime, there's the human nature side of it, there's the laughing, there's the teasing, there's the encouraging, and he's out there throwing it, catching it, making a juke move. And I guarantee you he's still doing that. He'll do that till he drops. And what that does is guys buy in. They love his personality, and they just love having him around, and they play well for him. And I think he's going to do well. It's
funny. Like, there's listening to Walsh's book or reading Pete's book, or like what you're saying, there was some philosopher said, the quote, like, it's far too important to take seriously. And, like, when I watch Pete, like, that's what I think of. Bill, the Walsh stuff that it's all third hand or hear stories. Like, I don't, was there an element of fun to him? I don't know if it was, I don't see it.
There was, and he had a very dry sense of humor. And yet it wasn't his natural disposition. Mm-hmm. His natural disposition was, we've got to focus on the details, and we've got to, turn over every rock. But it would come out now and then. And if he said something funny once a week or once every other week, man, it would carry a lot of weight, because you think, Coach Walsh doesn't have a sense of humor, but he really did. And actually, George Seifert was very similar,
Really,
in his approach as well.
Yeah, you told the story about stealing his shoe, so you must have felt comfortable that George would have.
Oh man,
seen some humor in it.
Of course I didn't tell it till years after I was done because I was still a little afraid of him. But yeah, he was a pretty serious guy, and when there were times where he would crack a joke about himself or tease guys or mess around, but like most of the time, it was, we've got to focus on these things. And it feels like you have a long time to prepare for a team, but during the course of a week, it's tough to get in and accomplish all you'd like to do, I'm sure, as a coaching staff in order to get ready for the upcoming game. And so I think he was always driven by that. Like, we can't waste time. We can't, have time to laugh and screw around. We've got to focus. And so, and hey, it worked for so many years. And I think George certainly got a lot of that from Bill. And then ironically, my last year, here comes Steve Mariucci, a junior Pete Carroll, fun-loving, laughing, joking around, and only a few years older than some of us old guys at the time, and great football mind and was focused, but he was fun-loving and had a personality, and you could mess with him and joke with him a majority of the time.
And you must have thought, that was like you said, your last year. You guys go to the NFC Championship again. So it was that 7 and 11 49ers seasons for you, was it hard to walk away that year? How did you, I texted, one thing I thought would be interesting to ask you about is how tight ends age, because it's such a unique position. Nobody does everything in the way that a tight end does. But what was it like at the end for you?
It's really hard, Guy, because you kind of I felt like, I think I can play till 37 or 38. And then I turned 34 prior to my last year and was going to turn 35 at the end. And what really the toughest thing is your legs go and your hips. Like, you start to have hip flexors, you have, hamstrings, it's muscles, it's all about the legs. I mean, in the middle of the season, I got hit, and the hit wasn't that bad, and I broke my leg. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I was out for 4 or 5 weeks while that healed. And it just kind of the fact that I was having trouble with my legs, I broke my leg, and I broke my wrist. I was playing with a cast on. And I was like, it was cumbersome, but I was catching everything. I was like, I'm not letting this cast make me drop passes. And so I was running around doing stuff like that. And then you just get to the point where, man, I got hit. I had a concussion my last year, and that was like my 8th one. And I mean, that sounds outrageous nowadays.
Yeah.
And so I had the concussion, had a broken leg, had a broken wrist. I'm turning 35, and it's like my legs are a challenge to get ready. And then I was thinking to myself, what am I trying to prove at this point? I mean, it's so hard to walk away, but 3 Super Bowls, you've been there, you've been at the top, you've done all the things that you would have dreamed of doing. And then it's like, okay, physically, how am I going to be when I'm 50? And really, you don't typically think like that. And so the fact that I was thinking about that probably led me more and more to the end of the season, like before the playoffs, just say, you know what, this is going to be it. Like, I could have extracted another year or two, but it would have been a pulled hamstring there. I tore my calf my last practice and, had to get shot up. And, I think I might've played 25 plays in the championship game. It was one thing after another. And eventually those years of playing tight end, and it's such a unique position because they want you to be a lineman, and then they want you to be a receiver at the same time. And it's the wear and tear on you when you're, inside, on a running play and blocking a guy and getting, driving him into the pile, and you got bodies on top of it. And you're getting smashed and drilled and hit, every play. It certainly affects your route running and your receiving abilities. And after, so many years, it eventually starts to catch up with you. It was weird. It really, a modern day example is, I think Travis Kelce last year was really feeling it. I thought he might step back, but I guess he's worked himself into better shape and lost some weight. But there's a point in time where you can kind of say, man, I'm not playing like I used to do. The proverbial lost a step. And so I'm more excited about watching George Kittle. I feel like if anybody can pull it off and go till he's, 36 or 37, maybe George can do it. But it's those little nagging injuries that start to get to you. And then it just feels like every week is a slog just to get to Sunday. And you don't want to go out being a guy that hangs on for dear life. You'd rather just be a guy that said, hey, I played it the game like I wanted to, and go out on your own accord.
George is trying. He said, I don't know, did you see the other day, he said he spends about $200,000 a year. I think he said in season on maintaining his body.
It's pretty awesome. And it's certainly paying off for him, and rooting for him to go deep into the 30s would be awesome.
These guys need a Super Bowl though, Brent.
I got to say, and guy, it's weird. I look back and there were a couple years. I mean, the 90 season when we were going to three-peat and when we fumbled with a couple minutes left in the game, it was just gut wrenching. The year that we didn't get in, we were 10-6. The Redskins won. We had to whoop the Redskins. I mean, there was Steve Young broke his ribs. We played in Green Bay, and we played in bad weather, and Steve couldn't play. And so I look back and I think, gosh, in my mind, I thought I should have had 5 Super Bowl rings, and I have 3, and I'm so thankful. And you realize it is so dang tough to get all the way through, to survive the injury bug, and to play at a high level and come home with that Super Bowl trophy. It's just so hard. And every year, most teams think, hey, this is going to be our year. We got a really great shot. And most teams really don't, but that's the beauty of the game. Everybody thinks that they do. And so our Niners certainly do. And it's been great to watch the organization spend the money to keep the core together. And you can't keep everybody in this day and age. Is really one of the things about my career that I was thinking about the other day. Up until 93, 94, we didn't have free agency. So players, basically, you were with the same organization and you knew who you were playing against, and teams were the teams. You'd be playing those guys every year, especially in our division. We play them twice a year, be the same guys. There wasn't all this movement. And so the game is drastically changed, but not every organization pays the money to keep their players. And, everybody talks about the window. We've kept the window open for a pretty long time. And I love the fact that we've got it open for a few more years, because, we're one of the 5 or 6 teams that can have a serious claim to potentially winning it.
It is crazy when you think about, you look through history of any sport, Jordan, everybody, Brady, like great coaches. It takes a great coaching staff and multiple all-time great players. Like that's who wins championships. And so you look at this Niners roster, and it's Bosa and Kittle and Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey and, Juszczyk. It's funny, the Niners have such a great history of fullbacks. And Fred Warner, and hopefully that's enough for Brock, because it seems like he's got something. To get to this point.
I absolutely believe that, and I'd be hard pressed to find a team that has more of those names of guys like that you just mentioned. There's probably some teams that have close, or maybe they have as many, but at some point it boils down to, okay, we got to go out on the field and let our play do the talking. And yeah, you got to be a little lucky injury wise and matchup wise, but yeah, there's only a handful of teams that can say that they have what we have. And it's great as a fan to know that we've got a ownership and a management group that says, hey, we're going for it every year that we think we can. And that's fantastic.
What have you thought watching Purdy? Like, what do you think watching him? The year before he was an MVP candidate, last year, then it was a totally different, I hate to use the word narrative, but I thought he was largely the same player. A lot of other things around him changed. So I don't, what's your,
I agree. Well, it's been a treat to watch him play. I think that I think I relate to him just a little bit because the expectation level was low. He came out of nowhere, not highly sought after, being the last pick. And I'm sure he has used that as a chip on his shoulder, and he's such a good guy. He's probably not going to say that. But, just watching him process. And so it's weird. I watch the game differently sometimes every week, depending on who's playing, depending on what's going on. But everybody jumps all over anybody when they make a comparison. But Joe Montana was, in my mind, the greatest processor that I've ever seen. He knew where he was going to go with the ball, and it could be the fifth read on a play, but he knew instantaneously that it was going to that guy just because of the way the defense ended up moving or checking or bouncing. He'd read it immediately, no matter what. And he knew where he was going with the ball a majority of the time. Now, that's not every play, but and so what I started to see early on in Brock's career was, man, he processes fast and gets rid of the ball and is accurate, and a lot of times hits the open man. And I think it's been fantastic to watch him. I think that last year, with some of the injuries, I think he pressed, in all honesty, and he was getting some pressure, more and more pressure. And I think he was probably trying to put the ball into areas a few times that probably is better off not taking that risk. But I think he was forced to take more chances last year, the way the season was unfolding. And so he was going for it. And it's, we had a band of injuries at receiver. We had different guys in there. We had new guys. And sometimes, and there's sometimes the interception is 100% on the receiver, but Brock Purdy's never going to be the guy where you think that it was the receiver, because he's never going to point or pout or throw his arms up in the air or do things that other quarterbacks do sometimes to make sure everybody knows it's not on them. And so he's that kind of a teammate. And so sometimes it's tough to know as a fan, hey, was that on the receiver? Was that on the quarterback? But I think he was taking more calculated risks just because of the way things were, and we were banged up a lot of the time and playing from behind. And so you gotta make some things happen. But I still love the way he played, love the way he competes, and he's just a solid kid all the way around. And you don't have to have the strongest arm in the NFL. And his arm is plenty strong. But Joe wasn't Elway or Jim Kelly or Dan Marino, but he's the one with all the Super Bowl rings. And it's because his anticipation and his accuracy and his ability to read the defenses were unlike anybody that I've ever seen. And so I think Brock has a lot of those characteristics, and I'm excited to see him with a full group of healthy players. And especially, and we hadn't even mentioned this, everything changes without McCaffrey back as your running back.
Yeah.
Not only running the ball, but coming out of the backfield. And that's to have him not there was a big miss too for Brock.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up arm strength. I remember a couple years ago going back and watching the whole drive that led up to the catch. Montana fumbled, they had like 5 turnovers in that game, right? Montana makes this throw to the far sideline early in that drive. It like makes your heart jump. It's like, yes. I can't believe he's trying to make, Brock makes these throws that when you watch like the camera angle from behind the quarterback and you see when he has to decide to throw it and where. That's the part that I think to those of us who just sit on the couch, it's so hard to understand how much you guys are anticipating, like where the next guy who's moving as fast as a train is going to be. That's the part that is just.
It's super remarkable. You know, guys, I mean, when you're on the field and you see it, it's magical. Really? Because it has to happen before it's obvious. And that's what's really great about the game, but it's special about quarterbacks that can make that throw before a guy gets out of his break. And it's mind-boggling with all those guys, the big guys coming down on you and pressure coming in your face and just stepping up and making the throw. And so, I mean, I was really glad the 49ers gave him his deal. I think he was very cognizant of not needing to break the bank, make sure it was team friendly so we can make sure to keep other key players. And I think that's what you hope for in your leader on your football team.
I mean, you played with two of the, I mean, you know, your top 10 list, these guys might both be in the top 6. I don't know where you would, I haven't thought about the list exactly.
They're definitely there. And it's pretty special to think. You know, it's weird when you're going through it, you don't look necessarily at, okay, where are we in history and what are we doing? The only time that I really was aware was when we were going to win, when I thought we were going to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. I'd be like, you know, no one's going to do that. I remember at the end of my career, well, when Joe left Kansas City, I remember thinking, no one's going to be better than Joe. I mean, he won 4 Super Bowls. There's no way that any one quarterback is going to ever win 5. But then along came Tom Brady. And so, but it's just to play with both Steve and Joe. I mean, amazing, funny, competitive, focused, bright, sophisticated, great processing guys. Yeah.
And needed you. Like, that's probably part of the fun too, right? Is understanding what a key cog in the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, Jerry, JT, and I are always saying, well, we made 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. It wasn't you guys.
Yeah. But you know what? The beauty of football is there is some kernel of truth in that. Like, you can't, everybody makes everybody. You know, the sport is just so
it's
dependent.
So true. And God, people lose that and they don't necessarily know. Like, it's hard to have a great quarterback without great receivers. And it's hard to be a great receiver without a great quarterback. We've seen that more than a few times in these last couple of years.
Yeah.
So it's just the way it goes. It all works together. I know the quarterbacks do get an awful lot of the attention, but there's so many things, whether it's the lineman, whether it's the center, whether it's the play calling, there's so many variables that go into it that people don't really realize. And I don't have a problem. Quarterbacks are certainly taking the lion's share of the burden. And so they should get the credit, but there's so many variables that go into a play that you just don't think about. And it really opened my eyes my first couple of years under Bill Walsh and how meticulous he was. And, you know, whether he'd yell at you about coming out of a route a half a yard early and you're thinking a half a yard, like, what the heck? That doesn't matter. It does matter. And I can't tell you how many times he'd be yelling at Joe for putting the ball right on my numbers instead of, you know, 6 inches out. So I wouldn't have to break stride or have a half a stride breakdown, because he said that's the difference between getting an extra 10 or 15 yards or getting tackled on the spot. And we go through these things time and time and time again. It's just so redundant. And you think to yourself, why the heck are we doing this? We're going over this again and again. Like, we all know this. But it became second nature. So under pressure in big moments, in the drive against the Bengals, and, you know, in overtime and 2-minute drills and all these different big playoff games, you don't think about it. You're doing it exactly how you'd always done it. And that repetition and just obsessive attention to detail made it understandable to me that, like, wow, there's so many things that have to work for a play to truly be successful.
But was it crazy when the quarterbacks tried to start their own union just for the quarterbacks?
Those greedy suckers. Yeah.
Wasn't that Aikman? What was that deal?
You know, what was the quarterback club? Oh, suckers.
Were you still in the league? Was that when you
It's
were in
like,
the
hey,
league?
you guys aren't making enough money. Now, comparatively, they probably were making nothing, but they were 10x everybody else,
Yeah.
and everybody else was, fighting. We just came out of the strike, and we got a little bit, but we didn't get much. Which turned into free agency. So eventually, players really benefit, but not anybody that was out on strike. And then here come the quarterbacks. Hey, we're going to start a quarterback club. We're going to market it, and we're just going to all be about ourselves and make extra money. And it's like, you suckers.
And it turns
was
out
kind of amusing.
it didn't
get it, but
yeah.
that's why I love tight end university. Like Kittle, get some, it's great. Get some pup for those guys, because they would have laughed if we said, well, we're going to start the tight end club. And they would have just gone like, well, nobody cares. Nobody's going to pay for that.
Yeah. You got to get out there. You got to go. They just had it last week.
I know. I just kill to get a t-shirt.
The sponsors are amazing. I mean, it's just like beer, and it's a good food. I mean, it seems like a lot of fun.
Those guys have some, there's a will and an enthusiasm from those guys at the highest level. And, being around George a few times, like he's just electric, and he's always like that.
Yeah.
And so his personality can carry the day. And a few of those guys, and the fact that they got it up and rolling and now it's a big deal. Yeah. They got to not let that sucker go. It'll be revenge of the tight ends on that quarterback club thing.
I want to ask you about Ricky Pearsall, because, and I don't know to what degree it's comparable, but you were in a very serious car accident your rookie year. I hope you don't mind me asking about it.
No.
But, you got hit. You and your wife got hit head on by a drunk driver driving the wrong direction.
Yes.
And it cost you your rookie season with the Steelers, which few people realize. And Ricky got shot. I mean, he's laying there on the street in San Francisco thinking he might die. And amazingly, he was able to come back and play last year and finish the year strong. But did you think when you saw that situation unfolding, did it remind you in any way of what you went through?
It did. And obviously I wasn't shot. That was a little bit more serious than my car accident, although it was frightening at the time, the car accident. But getting shot and thinking, gosh, the young guy's career could be taken away before it even started. But he was diligent. And what people don't realize is he had to put in the work the whole time he was recovering, because when he first came back and he wasn't making much of an impact, but he was great that he was out there. I was like, wow, fantastic. But his last couple games, you could kind of tell it started to click for him. And his route running was more precise. He was sharp in and out of cuts, catching the ball, gaining confidence. And it was like, wow, that was super impressive, just to know that he finished the year strong. And I mean, that can really catapult a guy with that confidence and with that, even minimal success into the off season and into this season coming up. And I'm glad you brought up his name, because I kind of look for him to really be a big contributor this year. And so what a special young man to be able to fight back from all that, because I mean, you don't even, at the time, you're like not even worried about football. Like, hey, man, I hope he's going to be okay. That's remarkable that even happened. But then just to be fortunate enough to not have it, have any lasting effect on his body, and to be able to come back and play was remarkable in and of itself. But to actually see it click for him really kind of made it special at the end of the year.
It almost, it feels weird, right, to ask about like a guy's, you had this near-death experience.
Yeah.
But how does it affect your, but it's the whole person, right? Like the whole person had to then try and worry about, you had an injury, your wife had your girlfriend, were you guys married yet?
Yeah, we were engaged.
You're engaged. And then you get cut by the Steelers. Like,
it was the worst.
Guys. And then, like, I don't know, you have like, what, 8, 10 combined catches in the next 2 years. Now you're a 5th round pick. He's a 1st round, but still there's just a lot going on as you're trying to figure out. And I would imagine the other thing, Brent, is, like my window is this big to make this thing work.
It's really true. Yeah, you know what, Guy? Those are the toughest times when you don't have an opportunity. Off season is one thing, but anybody can look good in the off season. So you got to do it when it matters. And that back for me, it was training camp. You had to make a name for yourself in training camp. That meant making catches that you shouldn't be making. That meant not dropping balls. That meant, making some big blocks, even to get on the radar. When you came to a team, we went to camp my first year with the 49ers, I think, with 125 guys. There was no 80 man. So getting reps was a challenge. And then, making the team and hanging on and fighting. And then, Russ Francis and John Frank were ahead of me. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to put in some time and effort and some years, and things just unfolded. And then it's the classic, hey, when you get your opportunity, you better step up and step through that window and make a statement. And so all those things are going through your mind at the time, but it's weird to look back because it seems like an awful lot of mental preparedness, but you just it's each and every day you needed to, have a good practice in the morning of training camp. And now I got to have a good afternoon practice. Now I got to make sure I know all my assignments. Now, hey, the next day, hey, we've got a preseason game. Hey, if I get in there, I need to, make an impact relative to that. And it's just slow, methodical process, which right now in my mind, I'm like, yeah, how did I even do that? But at the time, you just were disciplined to do it one step at a time. And then when you get your chance, you roll. And then you kind of feel like, man, I've been rolling for so long. I don't remember those early days. Like, our offense was so high powered. We would operate on all cylinders a majority of the time. And then obviously Joe getting injured. And then the greatest classic moment for Steve, it's like, okay, let's see what you got. And he stepped up. And so, and had a Hall of Fame career following one, which is remarkable. There are so many great storylines back in those days. And the bar was set so high for us the whole time I was there, but that made it fun. It made it exciting.
It's funny you mentioned, like, you could have picked, you were a free agent, so you could have picked a few different, you picked,
Yes.
The
back
biggest
when
mountain
free
to
agent
climb.
was a bad word. Nowadays, you die to be a free agent.
Yeah, but then it's like, all right, which team? Well, let me go to one of the best teams in the league. Maybe I'll go make that team. That's so it's. But I just want to, if I could, on Ricky, what did you see with him as a player that you think is promising?
Well, I actually think his burst is fantastic. And what I really started to see was he started to get separation, and that's the biggest challenge, right? You can be straight ahead, great speed, but if you can't get in and out of your breaks and separate, because those defensive backs are tremendous athletes, you got to get open. Basically, is when people say separation is basically the same thing, but you got to get that distance. And I started seeing him after the first couple of weeks, because it's fun. Hey, he's coming back from being shot. He's going to play in the game. Remarkable. That was a win. If nothing else even happened, I would have said, you know what? God bless you, Ricky. That's spectacular. But then you're like, okay, is he going to be a contributor? I mean, here's our first round pick. Are we going to throw him the ball? And he didn't get a lot of opportunities early on. And then, all of a sudden I was watching him, and it's like, oh, okay, hey, we threw him the ball. Man, that was a good route. And then I'm watching, man, he's getting at that break, and God, look at that. We could have thrown him that ball on the backside. And so you could almost, and I hadn't met Ricky, and I was there for a couple games, but I wasn't there at the end of the season. But you could almost feel the confidence growing in him. And it's like, hey, I can do this. And I know what I need to do to get open, to make catches, to be a playmaker on this team. And so that's why I felt like, gosh, he's going to have this whole offseason. I guarantee he's got confidence. I know he knows what he needs to do to be a successful wide receiver. And, I know everyone's concerned. Brandon's, still coming off his knee. Debo's gone. And so everyone's like, well, what do we got? Well, man, do not sleep on this guy, because I think he's going to be, maybe not the amount of catches, but I think he's going to be Puka Nacua-like at some point.
Wow, that's awesome. That's the beauty of a tight end is you could come here and break down blocking scheme and you can break down receiving. It's just it's like Otani. Like you guys are like the Shohei Otanis.
It's fun. I always say that, tight ends, we need some love. So we always tell each other that, beside the quarterbacks, we're the next smartest guys because we have to know so many positions. I mean, in the end, you got to know what the line's doing and you got to know what the receivers are doing. You got to know what the backs are doing. And it's like, okay, well, if we know all that, we know more than everybody else other than the quarterbacks. And so, yeah, we always talk about how smart we are.
Well, I don't think I was saying today, I think if you took the whole Shanahan tree and you gave them like a test on paper and you included Jusczcyk in it, like all the coaches and Juice.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do with Harvard. Like I don't think it has anything to do, but he so often you'll watch him and everything's mic'd up so you can hear him like Brandon over here or Jimmy. No, I remember he did it with Garoppolo. He's done it with Purdy. If you have to know the run game, and that's the beauty, like the Mike McDaniel story was that he figured out McVay and LaFleur, they're Kyle's pass game guys. I'll go learn the run game from Forster and become a different asset. And it's just,
smart.
I call college football games. I remember learning a few years ago, I was doing a game with a guy who's an analyst, who's a running back. And we had a meeting with the offensive coordinator of one of the teams. And we came out of the meeting and he said to me, he doesn't know the run game. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, he doesn't understand the run game. I'm like, how is that possible? And he said, you would be shocked at how many people don't understand the run game.
I think that's right. And it used to be the opposite. I mean, way back in the day, 3 yards in the cloud of dust and everybody was running the ball all the time and guys wouldn't understand the pass game. And, for many years, tight ends weren't even a thought as a receiver. But Juice is a special guy. I'm thrilled that he came back. I mean, that was kind of gut-wrenching for those few weeks that he was out and about. But Tom Rathman did the same thing. And he put people in spots all the time. Would check, would be yelling at the offensive line that, hey, we got a linebacker coming, would reposition Roger here or there. He knew everything as much as the quarterbacks. It was pretty remarkable that he knew all that. Because I used to test him all the time, and we'd go at it for this and that and the other thing. But he was dang bright, and so I feel like maybe it's the position, but yeah, a lot is asked of those guys. And since there are hardly any fullbacks anymore, it's great that we've got one of the great ones.
All right. Do you know when you're coming out? Do you know anything about the?
It's I think it's going to be December 14th for the Titans game.
Okay.
I was hoping it might be October or November, but they're making this statue, and we got to have the They said you got to have the statue done. I kind of laughed, like, wow. I never thought in all of my life I'd have a statue. Cool. So
wow. Do you sit? Do you sit? Or they took a photo. They take a photo, and they.
So yeah, the 49ers organization, like, I was blown away. They said, oh, we went back through a lot of your film and we kind of like the way that you spiked the ball. And we kind of feel like that was your signature thing. And so we've got a couple different pictures of you doing it. And here's this and this. And so yeah, they've nailed it down. So
that's awesome.
It almost made me not even have to think about it. Like, wow, this is pretty cool.
That's really cool. Congratulations. I know everyone's going to be really excited to see you out. Do you think you'll come to any games before that?
Oh yeah. Guy, my grandsons, obsessive 49er fans. They're only 5 and 7. And we've taken them out to a couple games these last couple years, which is weird. It's hard to think back at that age that you could be that big of a fan. They have jerseys of everybody on the team. I had to explain to them Debo leaving. They were sad for Brandon getting hurt. This unbelievable. But my youngest is 4. He thinks he's Brock Purdy or he's 5 now. For his 4th birthday, he had a Brock Purdy birthday. And my daughter's like, seriously? He's like, yeah, no, that's what I want. So we got fat heads of Brock. We threw McCaffrey in there because the other one thinks he's Christian. And these guys have 7 jerseys each of They have black, they have white, they have red, they have special of those players, and they do not let up once football season's starting. So I've come out. I mean, it's nice for me to come out to a game or alumni weekend. Those two knuckleheads are on me every week. When are we going to a game? And so they got a chance to meet. Christian was hurt last year, but they got a chance to meet Kittle and Brock, and they were so great with them. I mean, those guys, I mean, they barely know who I am. I'm just some old guy coming around saying I used to play, but they were so great with the grandkids, and they've got the biggest fans out here. And so we're in Dallas Cowboy country, and the kids are converting their friends to Niner fans. It's unbelievable. I mean, we've had 4 or 5 parents like approach my daughter saying, "So you're the kids, your kids are the ones that are the Niner kids, huh? That are telling my kids the Cowboys stink and they got to like Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey." So
that is so cool.
So that's our reasoning to come out. We got to come out to a couple games.
That's awesome. And
it'll be nice to get out before December anyway.
That's great. And the beauty, I think one of the things that's so cool about the Niners is that, like, it's, you know, a lot of former players say what you said. In the Niners organization, it does seem like, and of course you had a great career, so maybe it would apply to any organization, but the players do know. Guys are around all the time. You see them at practice. It does feel, maybe it's cliche, I don't think it is, a little collegial, you know, in the sense where, like, the former players really are a part of the history, the legacy. Yeah,
which is great, because I'm assuming most teams don't have that, and there's changeover and there's this and that, and the organization looks different every year, and we've had a lot of consistency, and I think that's great, and it's been fun to be able to be around.
All right, I've taken a lot of your time. I appreciate it very much.
Great.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Appreciate it, buddy.
And I look forward to seeing us. If you could pick any statue, spiking the football is. I
think it's different. That's for sure. And so I thought, you know what? I think that's right. Yep. They did all the analysis, and I just said, yeah, okay, that sounds good.
All right, Brent, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, guy. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you here in the not too distant future.
I hope so. All right, be well.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.